Randy Savage was one of wrestling's most charismatic superstars, whose flamboyant outfits and explosive intensity made him a cultural icon beyond the wrestling world. He went from being a minor league baseball player to becoming the Macho Man, capturing multiple championships while his relationship with Miss Elizabeth became wrestling's greatest love story. However, rumors of an inappropriate relationship with a teenage Stephanie McMahon would allegedly change everything for the Macho Man. In 2011, at 58 years old, the Macho Man would suffer a heart attack while driving, crashing his car in what would be his final tragic curtain call. But one question remains unanswered. Why was Randy Savage never mentioned in WWE for more than 20 years? In 1952, Randy Mario Poffo was born in Columbus, Ohio. His father, Angelo Poffo, was already making a name for himself as a professional wrestler in the 1950s and 1960s. His mother, Judith, was Jewish American, and Randy was raised Catholic in a household where wrestling was just part of everyday life. But Randy had different plans. Despite growing up around the wrestling business, he chose baseball as his first love. The St. Louis Cardinals signed him straight out of high school in 1971, and suddenly Randy found himself living the dream that millions of kids could only imagine. He was a talented outfielder with real potential, the kind of player who could make scouts take notice. When he injured his shoulder, he didn't give up. Instead, he taught himself to throw left-handed, showing the determination that would later define his wrestling career. Randy's minor league career took him through the Cardinals organization and later the Cincinnati Reds system. He spent his days traveling from town to town, playing in small stadiums for crowds that barely filled the bleachers. The minor leagues in the early 1970s were a grind. Players made almost nothing, maybe a few $100s a month during the season. Most had to find other work during the off-season just to survive. The dream of making it to the majors kept everyone going, but the reality was harsh. Only a tiny percentage of minor leaguers ever saw a major league stadium as anything more than a fan. This athletic background gave Randy advantages that most wrestlers never had. His hand-eye coordination was exceptional from years of tracking fly balls and line drives. His conditioning came from running bases and playing 140 games a season. He understood the mental pressure of performing in front of crowds, even small ones. Baseball had taught him how to handle failure, because even the best hitters fail 7 times out of 10. These skills would prove crucial when he eventually stepped into wrestling rings where split-second timing could mean the difference between a great match and a dangerous botch. Growing up as Angelo Poffo's son meant wrestling was never really foreign to Randy. He'd seen his father's matches, met other wrestlers, and understood the business side of the sport. Angelo was working territories across the Midwest, building his reputation as a tough, reliable performer. Randy watched how his father handled promoters, how he developed his character, and how he connected with audiences. This early exposure gave him insights that other wrestlers spent years learning through trial and error. By 1973, the financial pressures of minor league baseball were becoming impossible to ignore. Randy needed money during the off-season, and wrestling offered a way to use his athletic skills to pay the bills. He started wrestling part-time, initially seeing it as just a way to make ends meet until his baseball career took off. His first wrestling persona was called the Spider, inspired by the Spider-Man character. This early version of Randy was nothing like the flamboyant Macho Man that fans would later love. The Spider was more straightforward, without the colorful outfits or over-the-top personality that would make him famous. Randy's friend Terry the Goose Stevens and Georgia Championship Wrestling promoter Ole Anderson suggested he change his ring name to Randy Savage. They thought the name fit his fierce, aggressive style in the ring much better than the Spider. The name stuck, and Randy began developing the intensity that would become his trademark. He wasn't just playing a character, he was creating something that felt real and dangerous. As Randy spent more time in wrestling rings, something unexpected happened. He realized he was naturally good at this. Really good. His baseball background gave him coordination and timing that other wrestlers struggled to develop. His understanding of entertainment, learned from watching his father, helped him connect with audiences in ways that surprised even veteran wrestlers. The crowds responded to his energy and his willingness to push himself to the limit in every match. Wrestling started feeling less like a side job and more like his real calling. The money was getting better as he improved, and the creative aspects of developing his character excited him in ways that baseball never had. In baseball, you either got the hit or you didn't. In wrestling, you could control the story, work with your opponent to create something memorable, and really connect with the audience on an emotional level. The moment Randy realized wrestling could be more than just off-season work came during a particularly intense match where everything clicked. His timing was perfect, the crowd was completely invested, and he felt the rush of controlling their emotions through his performance. Baseball had been about individual achievement, but wrestling was about creating art with another person while entertaining hundreds of people at once. Baseball's loss became wrestling's gain when Randy discovered his true calling in the ring. His athletic foundation would prove crucial for developing the intense, high-energy style that made him famous. Those years of conditioning, mental toughness, and performing under pressure had prepared him for something he never expected. The former outfielder was about to become one of wrestling's biggest stars. How did a small family wrestling promotion become the training ground for one of wrestling's greatest performers? When Randy decided to fully commit to wrestling, he joined his father Angelo and brother Lanny in their family operation called International Championship Wrestling, or ICW. This wasn't just any regional territory, though. ICW was what wrestling insiders called an outlaw promotion, which meant they operated outside the established territorial system and weren't afraid to ruffle feathers. Working for family created pressures that other wrestlers never experienced. Randy couldn't just show up, do his job, and go home. Every match, every promo, every business decision reflected on the Poffo family name. Angelo had built ICW from nothing, and Randy felt the weight of that legacy every time he stepped through the curtain. If he had a bad match, it wasn't just Randy Savage who looked foolish. It was Angelo's son. That kind of pressure either breaks wrestlers or makes them great, and Randy used it as fuel. ICW operated differently than most regional territories. They didn't play by the gentlemen's agreements that kept other promotions in their lanes. Angelo booked ICW in direct competition with Jerry Jarrett's Memphis territory, which created instant heat and controversy. This meant ICW wrestlers, especially Randy, had to work twice as hard to prove they belonged. They couldn't rely on friendly relationships with other promoters or established booking deals. They had to earn everything through pure talent and determination. The outlaw status actually worked in Randy's favor. Without the restrictions of the traditional territorial system, he had complete creative freedom to experiment with his character. He started developing the flamboyant persona that would make him famous. The colorful outfits began appearing during his ICW days. The dramatic gestures and over-the-top personality traits were tested and refined in front of small crowds who became his first real fans of the Macho Man character. Randy's brother Lanny was also developing his own wrestling persona in ICW, and the competition between them pushed both to improve constantly. Lanny was more technical and cerebral in his approach, while Randy was pure intensity and charisma. They'd practice promos together, critique each other's matches, and challenge each other to be better. This sibling rivalry created an environment where mediocrity wasn't acceptable. Both brothers knew they were being compared not just to other wrestlers, but to each other. The interview skills that would become Randy's greatest weapon were sharpened during his ICW years. Angelo understood that wrestling was entertainment first, and he encouraged Randy to develop his speaking ability. Randy started experimenting with different voice patterns, building toward the distinctive rapid-fire delivery that would captivate audiences. He practiced catchphrases and dramatic pauses, learning how to control a crowd's energy through his words alone. During this period, a young woman named Elizabeth Hewlett joined ICW as an interviewer. She was beautiful, intelligent, and had a natural presence on camera that complemented Randy's intense personality perfectly. Their relationship developed slowly, starting as professional respect and growing into something deeper. Elizabeth understood Randy's drive and perfectionism in ways that other people couldn't. She saw past the developing Macho Man character to the dedicated athlete underneath. ICW's operations were rough around the edges compared to bigger territories. They ran shows in small venues, often with limited budgets and basic production values. But this stripped-down environment forced Randy to focus on the fundamentals. He couldn't rely on elaborate staging or expensive pyrotechnics. His character had to work based purely on his personality, his ring work, and his ability to connect with audiences. This foundation would prove crucial when he eventually reached bigger stages with more resources. The family promotion became Randy's laboratory for testing what worked and what didn't. He tried different character elements, various wrestling styles, and countless promo approaches. Some experiments failed completely, but others became signature elements of his persona. The freedom to fail and learn from those failures was something most wrestlers never got. They had to be polished from day one, while Randy could refine his craft without the pressure of national television or major storylines. Angelo's booking philosophy influenced how Randy approached storytelling in wrestling. ICW storylines were more personal and intense than what other territories were doing. They focused on real emotions and genuine conflicts between characters. Randy learned that the best wrestling stories came from truth, even if that truth was exaggerated for entertainment purposes. This understanding would serve him well when he started creating more complex characters later in his career. Randy realized he had outgrown what ICW could offer him. The territory was successful within its limitations, but Randy's ambitions were bigger than what a regional promotion could satisfy. He'd mastered the basics of character work, developed his interview skills, and proven he could carry storylines and main event matches. The Macho Man persona was fully formed and ready for a bigger stage. ICW gave Randy the perfect laboratory to create the character that would conquer the wrestling world. The family environment provided both pressure and support, while the outlaw nature of the promotion gave him creative freedom that most wrestlers never experienced. By 1985, Randy was ready to take his act to the biggest stage in wrestling, armed with skills and confidence that could only come from years of experimentation and family-driven perfectionism. What made Randy Savage's WWF debut in June 1985 so shocking that it instantly made him a star? The answer lies in one simple decision that nobody saw coming. When Randy stepped into the WWF, he walked into a wrestling world that was exploding with popularity. Hulk Hogan had already become the face of the Rock and Wrestling Connection, bringing wrestling into mainstream culture like never before. MTV was showing wrestling content. Celebrities were getting involved in storylines. Wrestling was becoming entertainment for the masses, not just hardcore fans. The WWF was gobbling up talent from dying territories across the country, and Randy was just another acquisition in Vince McMahon's master plan for national domination. But Randy understood something that most other wrestlers didn't get. He knew that standing out in this new landscape required more than just good wrestling skills. You needed to be different, memorable, and most importantly, unpredictable. WF officials presented Randy as the hottest free agent in wrestling. They built up his arrival by having established managers compete for his services. Bobby Heenan wanted him. Jimmy Hart was interested. Classy Freddie Blassie threw his hat in the ring. These were the biggest names in wrestling management, and they all wanted to work with the new guy from ICW. The wrestling world was watching to see which established manager would guide Randy's WWF career. Then Randy shocked everyone. Instead of choosing one of the proven managers, he selected a virtually unknown woman named Miss Elizabeth as his manager. Fans were confused. Even other wrestlers didn't understand what Randy was thinking. Elizabeth had been working as an interviewer in ICW, but she had zero experience managing wrestlers on the national stage. She was beautiful and poised, but nobody knew if she could handle the pressure of WWF television. This decision proved that Randy understood wrestling psychology better than anyone expected. While other wrestlers were making predictable choices, Randy created instant intrigue. Fans immediately started asking questions. Who was this mysterious woman? Why did Randy choose her over established managers? What was their relationship? The curiosity alone made people pay attention to Randy's matches and interviews. Randy's look was perfectly suited for the WWF's move toward mainstream entertainment. His colorful outfits were unlike anything wrestling fans had seen before. He wore bright bandanas, flashy sunglasses, and vibrant jackets that made him stand out even on a roster full of characters. While other wrestlers wore basic trunks and boots, Randy looked like a rock star who happened to wrestle. His visual presentation was so striking that people noticed him immediately, even if they'd never seen him wrestle. The development of his signature speaking style happened quickly once he hit WWF television. Randy's rapid-fire delivery and distinctive voice patterns were perfect for television. His "ooh yeah" catchphrase became instantly recognizable. Unlike other wrestlers who spoke in generic tough guy voices, Randy's vocal style was completely unique. He could build excitement and tension through his words alone, making even simple interviews feel important and dramatic. Randy's wrestling style was different from what WWF fans were used to seeing. While some WWF stars focused more on entertainment than athletic performance, Randy brought legitimate intensity to every match. His moves looked impactful and real. He wrestled with an urgency that made fans believe he was actually fighting, not just performing. This combination of athletic credibility and entertainment value made him a complete performer. The fan reaction to Randy's early WWF appearances was immediate and strong. His first televised match saw him defeat a local wrestler, but the way he won impressed everyone watching. Randy didn't just beat his opponent, he dominated him with moves that looked devastating. Fans could see that this wasn't just another character wrestler. This was someone who could actually go in the ring and back up his flashy persona with real talent. Randy's early storylines showcased his ability to create compelling drama. His feud with George the Animal Steele was built around Steele's innocent crush on Miss Elizabeth and Randy's jealous reaction. This wasn't just about two wrestlers fighting. It was about complex emotions and relationship dynamics. Randy could portray jealousy, possessiveness, and rage in ways that felt real and relatable, even in wrestling's theatrical environment. Within months of his debut, Randy had established himself as one of WWF's most compelling new stars. He was getting featured matches on television. His interviews were must-see television. Fans were either cheering him or booing him, but they were never indifferent. That's the mark of a true star in wrestling, the ability to make people care about what happens to you. Randy's unpredictable debut strategy proved he understood the new wrestling landscape better than veterans who'd been in the business for decades. While other wrestlers were following established formulas, Randy was creating something entirely new. His willingness to take risks and trust his instincts set him apart from everyone else on the roster. The former baseball player had found his calling, and the wrestling world was about to see what true star power looked like. Which match elevated Randy Savage from rising star to wrestling legend forever? The answer came through his pursuit of championship gold and the unexpected consequences that followed. In February 1986, Randy defeated Tito Santana to capture his first major WWF championship, the Intercontinental title. This wasn't just another title change. This victory established Randy as a dominant force who could carry championship-level storylines and main event matches. Randy's reign as Intercontinental Champion was marked by his intense protection of the title and his increasingly paranoid behavior. He treated the championship like it was the most important thing in the world, which made fans believe it actually mattered. His matches became more personal and more violent. He wasn't just defending a title, he was defending his identity as the Macho Man. This psychological investment made every defense feel crucial. The championship reign put Randy on a collision course with Ricky the Dragon Steamboat, one of the most respected technical wrestlers in the business. Steamboat was everything Randy wasn't in terms of wrestling style. Where Randy was explosive and unpredictable, Steamboat was smooth and methodical. Where Randy relied on intensity and charisma, Steamboat built his reputation on pure wrestling skill and athleticism. Their contrasting styles created natural tension that promised an incredible match. The build-up to their WrestleMania 3 encounter began with one of the most brutal attacks in wrestling history. Randy crushed Steamboat's throat with the ring bell during a televised match, creating a storyline that felt genuinely dangerous. Steamboat disappeared from television for months, supposedly recovering from his injuries. This absence built anticipation for his return and created real heat between the two wrestlers. Fans genuinely believed Randy had seriously injured Steamboat, which made their eventual confrontation feel like a revenge story. When Steamboat returned, he was focused solely on getting his hands on Randy. The personal nature of their feud elevated it beyond just another championship match. This wasn't about wrestling titles or company politics. This was about payback for a vicious attack that could have ended Steamboat's career. The emotions felt real because they were built on a foundation of legitimate athletic competition and personal animosity. Expectations for their WrestleMania 3 match were incredibly high. Wrestling fans knew both men were capable of great performances, but nobody expected what they were about to witness. The match was scheduled for the Pontiac Silverdome in front of over 90,000 fans, the biggest wrestling audience either man had ever performed for. The pressure was enormous, but both wrestlers embraced it. Randy and Steamboat spent months preparing for their encounter. They reportedly choreographed every move, writing sequences on legal pads and memorizing the match move for move. This level of preparation was unusual for wrestling matches, which typically relied more on improvisation and calling spots during the action. Their meticulous planning showed their commitment to creating something special. The technical mastery both men brought to their legendary 14-minute match was immediately obvious. Every move flowed perfectly into the next. The timing was flawless. The storytelling was compelling from the opening bell to the final pinfall. Randy's explosive offense contrasted beautifully with Steamboat's technical counters. Neither wrestler wasted a single movement or gesture. Every action served the story they were telling. Their WrestleMania 3 Classic redefined what wrestling could be on the biggest stage. Previous WrestleMania matches had focused more on celebrity involvement and entertainment spectacle. Randy and Steamboat proved that pure wrestling skill could captivate massive audiences just as effectively as any celebrity cameo or elaborate production. Their match was proof that wrestling fans appreciated genuine athletic competition when it was presented properly. The crowd reaction throughout the match was electric. Over 90,000 fans were completely invested in every near fall and dramatic moment. When Steamboat finally pinned Randy to win the championship, the reaction was deafening. The audience had witnessed something special, and they knew it. The immediate aftermath saw fans on their feet, celebrating not just Steamboat's victory, but the incredible performance they just witnessed. Wrestling experts still consider this match one of the greatest ever because it combined technical excellence with emotional storytelling. The athletic skill was undeniable, but the psychology was equally impressive. Both wrestlers understood how to make the audience care about the outcome through their actions and reactions. They created drama through wrestling moves, rather than relying on outside interference or gimmicks. Losing the title actually elevated Randy's status rather than hurt it. His performance proved he could deliver classic matches when the stakes were highest. Wrestling fans and industry insiders recognized that Randy had just participated in something truly special. Losing to Steamboat in such a memorable way was more valuable than winning a forgettable match against a lesser opponent. The Steamboat match positioned Randy for even bigger opportunities in the WWF. His reputation as a big match performer opened doors to main event status and championship opportunities that might not have been available otherwise. Wrestling promoters knew they could trust Randy to deliver when it mattered most, which made him a valuable asset for major storylines and pay-per-view events. The Steamboat match proved Randy could deliver classic performances when it mattered most, establishing him as one of wrestling's elite performers and setting the stage for his eventual rise to the top of the wrestling world. How did wrestling's most powerful alliance become its most bitter rivalry? The story begins at WrestleMania 4 in March 1988, when Randy Savage captured his first WWF championship. The tournament to crown a new champion was one of the biggest wrestling events of the decade, and Randy's victory over Ted DiBiase in the finals was the moment everything changed for him. But the most iconic image from that night wasn't Randy holding up the title belt. It was him celebrating with Miss Elizabeth on his shoulders, both of them beaming with joy as confetti fell from the ceiling. That celebration marked the beginning of something bigger than just a championship reign. Hulk Hogan had been instrumental in helping Randy win the tournament, appearing at ringside to even the odds against DiBiase and his bodyguard Virgil. The mutual respect between Randy and Hogan was obvious, and their friendship felt genuine to wrestling fans who had watched them support each other through various storylines. When they officially formed the Mega Powers Alliance, it seemed like the most natural partnership in wrestling. The Mega Powers dominated the WWF like no tag team had before them. They weren't just two wrestlers working together. They were the company's two biggest stars, combining their popularity and talent into something unprecedented. Their matches drew huge crowds and television ratings. Merchandise sales went through the roof. Wrestling fans couldn't get enough of seeing Hogan and Randy team up against common enemies. The alliance represented everything that was exciting about wrestling in the late 1980s. Randy's championship reign with Hogan by his side was the peak of his career up to that point. He had proven he could carry the company as its top champion, and having Hogan's support legitimized his position in ways that surprised even skeptical fans. Their combined charisma and star power made every appearance feel like a major event. When they walked to the ring together, the crowd noise was deafening. Wrestling had never seen anything quite like the Mega Powers, but success couldn't hide the growing tension that was building between the two stars. Randy's naturally suspicious personality began creating problems that nobody anticipated. His overprotective behavior toward Miss Elizabeth became more obvious and more concerning. He watched every interaction she had with other wrestlers, including Hogan. What started as normal caution slowly transformed into something much more unhealthy and obsessive. The cracks in their partnership became visible during routine backstage segments and interviews. Randy would tense up whenever Hogan spoke directly to Elizabeth or showed her any attention. His facial expressions revealed jealousy and insecurity that he tried to hide but couldn't control completely. Wrestling fans started noticing these subtle moments where Randy's paranoia would surface, even when nothing inappropriate was happening. Hogan's naturally friendly personality made the situation worse without him realizing it. He treated Elizabeth with the same respect and kindness he showed everyone, but Randy interpreted these normal interactions as threats to his relationship. Every handshake, every conversation, every moment of eye contact became evidence in Randy's mind that Hogan had ulterior motives. His jealousy was consuming him from the inside, affecting his ability to think clearly about their partnership. The backstage politics made everything more complicated. Wrestling insiders knew that Hogan was still the company's top draw and biggest star, even though Randy held the championship. This reality ate at Randy's ego and fed his insecurities. He wanted to be seen as Hogan's equal, but the wrestling business treated Hogan as the more important star. These real tensions between the wrestlers added authenticity to the storyline that was developing on television. The build-up to their eventual confrontation was masterful storytelling that played out over several months. Wrestling fans could sense the tension building, but nobody knew exactly when or how the explosion would happen. Randy's behavior became more erratic and unpredictable. His interviews started containing subtle references to his frustrations. The psychological pressure was building towards something that felt inevitable but shocking at the same time. The explosive breakup happened during a tag team match when Randy's jealousy finally boiled over completely. After Elizabeth was accidentally knocked unconscious during the match, Hogan carried her to the back for medical attention. When Randy saw Hogan holding Elizabeth, something snapped inside him. He attacked Hogan with the championship belt, hitting him repeatedly while screaming about betrayal and disrespect. The attack was vicious and personal in ways that made fans gasp. Randy's heel turn shocked the wrestling world because it felt so real and emotionally raw. This wasn't just a scripted storyline change. It was a complete character transformation that revealed Randy's darkest impulses and deepest fears. His attack on Hogan was driven by genuine emotion that transcended normal wrestling storytelling. Fans had never seen anything quite like it before. Their WrestleMania 5 showdown became one of the biggest box office successes in wrestling history. The personal nature of their feud, combined with both wrestlers' star power, created massive interest among wrestling fans and casual viewers alike. The match represented the climax of months of psychological storytelling that had captivated audiences. The Mega Powers saga proved Randy could carry storylines that transcended normal wrestling entertainment. His complex character work during this period showed emotional depth and psychological realism that elevated wrestling above simple good versus evil stories into something more sophisticated and compelling. Why did Randy Savage's move to WCW in 1994 shock the wrestling world? The answer lies in what everyone thought they knew, about a 41-year-old wrestler who seemed to be winding down his career. By the early 1990s, Randy had been moved into a commentary role for WWF television. Vince McMahon saw him as a veteran who could add credibility to the announce team, while the company focused on building newer stars. Randy was calling matches instead of wrestling them, wearing suits instead of colorful trunks, and watching from ringside while younger wrestlers got the spotlight he once owned. The frustration was eating at Randy from the inside. He wasn't ready to hang up his boots and become just another voice on television. Wrestling was still in his blood, and he felt like he had years of good matches left in him. The WWF's vision for his future didn't match his own ambitions. He wanted to wrestle, not just talk about wrestling. He wanted to create moments in the ring, not just describe them for the audience at home. At 41, many wrestling insiders thought Randy was past his prime when he made the jump to WCW. The wrestling business was brutal on aging bodies, and most wrestlers his age were either retired or working part-time schedules. Critics wondered if Randy could still perform at the level that made him famous. His best years seemed to be behind him in the WWF, so why would WCW expect anything different? The circumstances that led to his departure from WWF after nearly a decade were complex. Randy felt undervalued despite his years of service to the company. He had been one of the biggest stars of wrestling's mainstream boom, but now he was being pushed aside for the next generation. The writing was on the wall. The WWF was moving in a different direction, and Randy wasn't part of their long-term plans as an active wrestler. WCW offered Randy something the WWF wouldn't give him anymore: the chance to wrestle full-time again instead of just commentating. WCW needed established stars to compete with the WWF's roster, and Randy represented a proven draw who could still perform. The financial package was attractive, especially when Randy brought his lucrative Slim Jim endorsement deal with him. That deal reportedly earned him $750,000 per year in 1995, proving his marketability extended beyond just wrestling. Randy's World Championship runs in WCW surprised everyone who thought his best days were over. He won the WCW World Heavyweight Championship multiple times, including a victory in a 60-man battle royal at World War III in 1995. He regained the title in January 1996, proving he could still be the face of a major wrestling company. His matches were intense and competitive, showing that age hadn't slowed down his signature style. The reunion with Miss Elizabeth added emotional weight to Randy's WCW storylines. Fans who had followed their relationship during the WWF years felt genuine nostalgia seeing them back together. Elizabeth became Randy's manager again, creating continuity between his past success and his current run. Their chemistry was still there, and it enhanced every storyline Randy was involved in during his early WCW years. Randy's role in the NWO storyline kept him relevant during WCW's hottest period. The New World Order was the biggest angle in wrestling, and Randy found himself right in the middle of it. He initially teamed with Hulk Hogan before eventually turning on him and joining the NWO. This allowed Randy to continue his legendary rivalry with Hogan while staying involved in WCW's most important storylines. The renewed feuds with Hulk Hogan proved that their chemistry hadn't diminished over the years. Their matches in WCW felt fresh, despite their long history together. Randy's heel work was as convincing as ever, and fans bought into their conflicts just like they had years earlier. The personal animosity between their characters translated perfectly to the WCW environment. Randy proved age was just a number with memorable matches throughout his 40s. He had notable encounters with Ric Flair, Diamond Dallas Page, and other top WCW stars. His conditioning remained impressive, and his intensity never wavered. Younger wrestlers respected his work ethic and ability to elevate their performances through his experience and psychology. The recognition that Randy had successfully reinvented himself came from both fans and wrestling critics. He had proven that established stars could thrive in new environments when given the right opportunities. His WCW run wasn't just a victory lap or a nostalgia act. It was a legitimate second chapter in his career that produced memorable moments and quality matches. Randy's WCW run proved he was far from finished and could adapt to any wrestling environment. He adjusted his style slightly to work with different opponents while maintaining the core elements that made him special. His interviews remained compelling, his matches stayed intense, and his presence elevated every storyline he touched. His 5-year renaissance showed that true stars can thrive regardless of company politics. Randy's success in WCW demonstrated that talent and charisma could overcome age and corporate limitations. He had found a place where his abilities were valued and utilized properly, allowing him to extend his career on his own terms while entertaining fans who thought they'd seen the last of the Macho Man. What personal demons haunted the man behind the Macho Man persona? Behind Randy's flamboyant character was a man struggling with perfectionism and control issues that affected every aspect of his life. The colorful outfits and entertaining interviews masked someone who demanded complete control over his environment and the people around him. Wrestling insiders knew that working with Randy meant dealing with someone who obsessed over every detail, from match choreography to backstage interactions. Stories emerged about Randy's difficult backstage behavior that painted a troubling picture of his personality. He was known for being extremely demanding during rehearsals and planning sessions. Other wrestlers described him as someone who couldn't let go of control, even in situations where his input wasn't needed or wanted. His perfectionism drove him to micromanage everything around him, creating tension with colleagues who preferred more relaxed working relationships. The most disturbing stories involved Randy's overprotective treatment of Miss Elizabeth. Rumors circulated throughout the wrestling industry about him locking Elizabeth in dressing rooms to prevent other wrestlers from interacting with her. These allegations suggested a level of controlling behavior that went far beyond normal relationship dynamics. Wrestlers and backstage personnel reported seeing Elizabeth isolated from others, seemingly at Randy's direction. The stories about Randy controlling Elizabeth's interactions became legendary in wrestling circles. He allegedly monitored her conversations with other wrestlers, managers, and even WWE officials. Elizabeth couldn't move freely backstage without Randy knowing where she was and who she was talking to. This behavior created an uncomfortable atmosphere for everyone involved, as other wrestlers felt they had to walk on eggshells around Elizabeth to avoid Randy's anger. Randy's brother Lanny offered alternative explanations for his actions, defending Randy against the worst accusations. Lanny suggested that Elizabeth herself sometimes preferred the privacy of a locked door, particularly given the environment of the wrestling locker room where the behavior of some male wrestlers was questionable. He argued that Randy was protecting Elizabeth from inappropriate advances rather than controlling her out of jealousy or possessiveness. Lanny's defense highlighted the complex reality of wrestling's backstage culture during that era. Locker rooms were rough environments where crude behavior was common and women often faced unwanted attention. From this perspective, Randy's protective instincts could be seen as reasonable precautions rather than controlling behavior. However, the extent of his actions suggested something beyond normal protective measures. Randy's perfectionism made him demanding to work with, but also elevated match quality significantly. His meticulous approach to match planning, demonstrated in the WrestleMania 3 encounter with Ricky Steamboat, where every move was choreographed, showcased his commitment to excellence. Wrestlers who worked with Randy often produced their best performances because he pushed everyone to meet his incredibly high standards. The dedication to his craft came with a cost that affected his relationships with colleagues. Randy's insistence on controlling every aspect of his matches meant long planning sessions and endless rehearsals. Some wrestlers appreciated this approach because it guaranteed quality results. Others found it exhausting and preferred the spontaneity that came with calling matches on the fly during actual competition. The real-life marriage troubles between Randy and Elizabeth paralleled their on-screen drama in uncomfortable ways. Their relationship became strained under the pressure of Randy's controlling behavior and the demands of their wrestling careers. The line between their characters and their real personalities blurred to the point where fans couldn't tell what was scripted and what was genuine marital conflict. Their divorce, announced in 1992, marked the end of one of wrestling's most famous real-life couples. The split affected both their personal and professional lives, as they had to continue working together despite their failed marriage. Elizabeth's departure from Randy's storylines felt natural, because their real relationship had deteriorated to the point where working together became impossible. Persistent rumors about why WWE kept Randy away for years after he left have never been fully explained. The most widespread story suggests that Randy had an affair with Stephanie McMahon, which supposedly caused Vince McMahon to blacklist him from the company. However, there's little concrete evidence to support this claim, and Bruce Pritchard has stated that there were actually numerous discussions about bringing Randy back. The loss of the Slim Jim sponsorship when Randy moved to WCW cost WWE valuable advertising revenue, which may have contributed to their reluctance to work with him again. Some sources suggest that Vince McMahon's personality and his tendency to hold grudges played a role in Randy's exclusion. The exact reasons remain unclear, with various conflicting accounts adding to the mystery. Randy's personal struggles revealed the human cost of maintaining such an intense public persona. The pressure of being the Macho Man character seemed to amplify his natural tendencies toward perfectionism and control. Wrestling's demanding schedule and high-stress environment made it difficult for him to separate his character from his real personality. The man behind the character was far more complex and troubled than fans ever realized. Randy's success came at a personal price that affected his relationships, his mental health, and his ability to find peace outside the wrestling ring. His story serves as a reminder that even the most charismatic performers can struggle with demons that their public personas successfully hide from the world. How did a heart attack in 2011 finally end the mystery surrounding wrestling's most enigmatic star? The answer begins with a tragedy that happened 8 years earlier. In 2003, Miss Elizabeth died unexpectedly at the age of 42. The circumstances surrounding her death were tragic and complicated. She had been living with Lex Luger when she suffered acute toxicity from a mix of painkillers and alcohol. Her death devastated Randy, even though they had been divorced for over a decade and hadn't seen each other in several years. Randy expressed that he felt bad for Elizabeth's family after her passing. Despite their troubled marriage and bitter divorce, her death marked the beginning of his final chapter. The woman who had been such an important part of his wrestling career and personal life was gone. Randy had already been away from wrestling for several years by this point, but Elizabeth's death seemed to affect him deeply. He became even more reclusive and private about his personal life. Randy remained estranged from WWE while his health quietly deteriorated throughout the 2000s. He was living in Florida with his second wife, Lynn Payne, whom he had married in 2010. Randy had stepped away from the wrestling spotlight almost completely. He wasn't making regular appearances or doing interviews. The wrestling world rarely heard from him during these years. Most fans assumed he was simply enjoying retirement and staying out of the public eye by choice. His final years away from wrestling were spent trying to find peace outside the ring. Randy had always been an intense person who struggled with the pressures of fame and the wrestling business. Without the constant demands of performing and traveling, he seemed to be looking for a quieter life. He was no longer the colorful character that fans remembered. Instead, he was just Randy Poffo, trying to live a normal life away from the cameras and crowds. The medical issues that led to his enlarged heart and coronary artery disease had been developing for years without proper treatment. Randy had never been diagnosed or treated for these serious heart problems. His arteries were almost completely blocked, creating a dangerous situation that could have been fatal at any moment. The years of intense physical activity, combined with the stress of his wrestling career, had taken a toll on his cardiovascular system that he wasn't aware of. The morning of May 20th, 2011, started like any other day for Randy and Lynn. They were driving in Randy's Jeep Wrangler near their home in Seminole, Florida. Both were wearing seatbelts as they headed out for what seemed like a routine trip. Randy was behind the wheel, and Lynn was in the passenger seat. Nothing about the morning suggested that tragedy was about to strike. Everything changed in an instant when Randy suffered a sudden heart attack while driving. The pain and shock of the cardiac event caused him to lose control of the vehicle immediately. The Jeep veered off the road and crashed into a tree. Lynn survived the accident, but Randy's condition was critical. The heart attack had been massive and sudden, giving him no warning or chance to pull over safely. Emergency services responded to the crash scene quickly, but their efforts couldn't save Randy. He was pronounced dead at the scene at the age of 58. The wrestling world was shocked by the news. Randy Savage, one of the most vibrant and energetic performers in wrestling history, was gone. Fans couldn't believe that someone who had seemed so full of life could die so suddenly and unexpectedly. The autopsy results revealed the full extent of Randy's health struggles that nobody had known about. He had suffered from serious heart problems, including an enlarged heart and advanced coronary artery disease. His arteries were almost completely blocked, which led to the fatal heart attack. The official cause of death was determined to be heart disease due to the blocked arteries. Most shocking was the fact that Randy had never been treated for these issues, suggesting he either didn't know about them or had chosen not to seek medical care. Randy's sudden death ended years of speculation about his relationship with WWE and why he had been kept out of their programming for so long. His passing brought an outpouring of tributes from wrestlers, fans, and industry insiders who remembered his contributions to the business. The wrestling community mourned the loss of one of its most unique and talented performers. The long overdue recognition finally came in 2015 when Randy was posthumously inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame. This delay had been conspicuous, especially since many of his contemporaries from wrestling's golden era had already been inducted years earlier. His induction was a mark of distinction that recognized his massive contributions to the wrestling world. Randy's 2015 WWE Hall of Fame induction proved that time heals even the deepest wounds. Whatever business disputes or personal conflicts had kept him away from WWE were finally put aside. His death had ended years of speculation and allowed his true legacy to finally be celebrated properly. The wrestling world could now remember Randy Savage for what he truly was: one of the greatest performers in the history of the business. Randy Savage's story proves that the most compelling characters are often the most complicated people. His influence can be seen in every modern wrestler who combines athletic ability with larger-than-life personality and masterful mic skills. Wrestlers today still try to capture that same magic Randy brought to every interview and match. The Macho Man's legacy reminds us that behind every wrestling legend is a human being, fighting battles we never see. Randy's struggles with control, perfectionism, and personal relationships show us that even our heroes deal with real problems. His January 12, 2015 WWE Hall of Fame induction finally gave him the recognition he deserved all along. Check out our video on Lex Luger. Like and subscribe for 100 years of luck. Until next time.